Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of LandO's Lock-ins. Yes, indeed, it is our CDL Pick'em show. We go through the Pick'em process. I go over the way that I evaluate the games that we're coming into, go over some of my commentary prep, and overall, do my best to try and not embarrass myself, which is exactly what I did at opening weekend. It was wild. It was crazy. It was basically chapter 2 of what was an already unbelievable kickoff classic. I said it, throughout the broadcast. Vanguard is lit. I mean, it is. It's absolutely insane. Like, the matches that we had were incredible. And in terms of predictions, I mean, I'll be fair. I'm gonna go and level with myself a little bit. Not horrible, but still not great, right? We go 5-5. We get this one wrong right here. I thought London was going to be solid, right? I expect this London Royal Ravens team to be a solid team. I hate the fact that people are hating on my power rankings, which were not actually my power rankings. We'll get to that maybe at some point in the future. But again, that was one of the harder matches to predict for me. I don't think anybody really expected Optic to go 0-2 this week. If you did, props to you. But I did not expect that. Toronto versus Seattle. I thought it was going to go to a game 5. I was right, but I didn't choose the Iceman, which is, of course, my mistake. I did get this one, though. This one was, to me, one of my hype moments where I was like, okay, I kind of know what I'm talking about. But again, it was mostly New York just not showing up for the most part. But I was happy to get this one and +3 as well. Also, made a big mistake right here. FaZe versus LA Thieves. I knew that. I knew that FaZe were going to win that series. Even after they beat Paris, I don't know. Just an I don't even know what to say. Just a lapse of judgment on my part. But I'm excited to try and improve a little bit. I'm aiming for 7 out of 10 this week. We'll see if we can do it. I might make a few adjustments as the week progresses, but we'll see what ends up going down. But a great slate of matches, another 10 to go off of. And let's go and jump right into it. Okay, Paris Legion versus the Boston Breach. We're going to talk about Boston real quick. Opening weekend, they play one match versus the LA Gorillas. They win that series in a game 5. They lose both the hard points, but they take both of the search destroys. That is what I think this team's blueprint is going to be throughout the remainder of the season. There's a lot of people who were high on this team to begin the season, talking about how, hey, you know what? From a power rankings position, this team looks like one of the best in the game. A lot of those conversations were based off of hardpoint, but I think that this team will slowly begin to turn into more of a search and destroy dominant team. I think search and destroy will come first in terms of record, and then the respawns will then join alongside those. Hopefully be above 50% if you're a Breach fan. Like I said, one series, they get the job done. Wasn't the cleanest, but hey, you're happy to take down what can be a wild team in the LA Gorillas, as we learned throughout a lot of the highlight moments from this opening weekend. But the one thing that I do want to see from Boston in this series, I want to see them take a convincing hardpoint. I'm talking like a 250 to 170 victory on whatever it may be. The hardpoints just don't look super solid. And that's one thing that is going to have to change if this team wants to be a high-ranking roster in the power rankings. Now, on the other side for Legion, right? Impressed a lot of people in their first series versus the Atlanta FaZe. They go to a game 5. They were up 2-1 at one point. They were playing excellent on the Gavutus, especially in the hard points and in the control. Really made FaZe work a lot. And a majority of the reason why Paris got to go to a game 5 versus Atlanta was simply based off of John and Temp. I mean, myself and Study were talking about it. I mean, John looked like he was in Black Ops 3 form. Temp looked like he was in Black Ops 4 form. So a lot of impressive stuff from Paris. They go into that series versus Florida Mutineers, and it was not at all the same. So again, not really sure what to expect from the Paris Legion. But in terms of this series, right, in terms of Paris versus Boston, I don't know. I think this series is going to be decided by hardpoints. Both teams, to me, have a similar style in some ways, where I feel like Paris will be a good search destroy team, or at least that will be one of their strong suits, potentially. And then the same thing can be said for Boston. I think the search destroys will be competitive. I think the control, depending on if it's Gavutu, which it very well could be competitive. So I think the opening hard point, but just in general, the hard points will be big. If you're Boston, I don't know if you want to play them on Gavutu. I think you want to play them on a small map. So we'll see if that happens. And if that is the case, that's going to put a lot of pressure on Cap to obviously have a great series. And it's also going to be on to Nero, who I think needs to have a really good week, as they will have the FaZe to worry about tomorrow. So All those things considered, I do think that it goes to a game 5. I think this will be a competitive one. I think Paris will stay with them for a while, but ultimately, I think it'll be Breach staying alive and winning out in game 5. Moving on, Minnesota versus the Seattle Surge. Opening weekend for Rocker. One series, and they're able to take it. Unbelievable series, right? Versus Optic Texas. Now, in my predictions, I had this going to a game 5. I thought Optic were going to be able to take this. Not the case, though, right? It was a wild Berlin hardpoint that the Rocker were able to take based off some amazing plays from Standy over at P2. They were able to stay alive, secure spawns. They go to a game 5, and the chips fell where they did. They closed things out in round 11, which was wild. Illy has that incredible play where it looked like he was going to have it, but Standy just punches him with the pistol in his hand. It was crazy. I don't know. It's like this Minnesota team looks like the Minnesota team from last year, not just in terms of the players because everybody's the same, but to me, the big story will be in this one versus the Surge about hard points. We know they can win search and destroys. We know that they have the ability, at least, in prior years, to take in control. But when you look at that win versus Optic, it's not a clean win. Like, you will absolutely take it, but winning it in a game 5, round 11 versus Optic, where you shouldn't have won the Berlin. You won the first search and destroy convincingly, but the second one, not at all the case. It almost feels like that was a 4-1 win for Optic. It could have been rather a 4-1 win for Optic. So I don't know. I'm just not really sure where to put the Rocker right now. I was happy with the clutchness that they showed, but you don't always want to bet on that every single time. For the Surge side, continued to impress us, right? They've really showed out again. They come through. They 3-0 New York, had an even better showing versus the Subliners than they did at the Kickoff Classic. Right? They win the crazy Game 5, Round 11 versus Toronto. Right? That was the team they lost to at the Kickoff Classic. They come through, beat that team. Also, that one comes down to a Game 5, Round 11 where accuracy hops on the bomb. A wild series. If you have not got the chance to watch it, go back and watch the Kickoff Classic final rematch at opening weekend. It was amazing. And one of the biggest, like I said, impressive points for me about the Surge team is that they're not just winning hardpoints, right? They're not just like this team that's going to overwhelm you in slang and hardpoint. No, they're going to overwhelm you in slang, but they're going to do it in multiple ways. It's not just going to be in hardpoint, but they can also beat you in search and destroy. They're 6-1 in that mode, and they're also 4-2 in control, with their only losses coming versus the Toronto Ultra. So again, a lot of things to like about Seattle. One of the biggest things to like about Seattle is Sib. He's got the number 1 KD. He's at a 1.39. He looks like what could be the best player in the game. It's hard to give predictions to start off a year, but Sib looks amazing in that flex role. And that will be a very, very big thing to worry about if you are the Rocker, right? If you're looking at kind of like that versus battle, Major Maniac and Priesta in terms of the ARs, versus accuracy and Sib. And Rocker are going to have their hands full trying to deal with somebody like Sibilance. So with that in mind, I'm going to take Seattle. I don't think that's really a surprise to a lot of people, but it's going to be on the Rocker to show us, what they've got. To me, for the Rocker, this is a bad matchup. Not just because it's the Surge, but because, like I said, Seattle are not just a good hardpoint team, but they are an excellent search and destroy team and a very good control team. So if you're the Rocker, who should be a good search destroy team and a good control team, this roster really has a good chance to counter you in a lot of ways. And I do prefer the Surge in hardpoints as well, considering that even though the Rocker got to a game 5, they barely won the Berlin. They didn't win the first hardpoint versus Optic Texas. So all those things considered, I'm going to go Surge 3-0. That's not to say that Rocker's a bad team. I just think that this is a very difficult matchup for the Rocker specifically. And I think that the Surge continue to roll and that they improve to a 3-0 record. Final match of Friday, we've got the LA Gorillas taking on the Toronto Ultra. Obviously, just talked about it for Toronto. They lose a wild Game 5, Round 11 versus the Surge. It's hard to really give a lot of points around that. Ultra are still, without a doubt, one of the best teams in the entire game. The only gripe that I have with Toronto is just in the Game 1 hardpoints. They're 1-3 right now throughout Vanguard, and those losses come to a phenomenal team in the Seattle Surge. They've lost both the opening hardpoints versus that team. And the other one comes versus the LA Thieves, who also have an amazing hardpoint record. So it's hard to be mad at Toronto. You just feel like you want to see this team win those more convincingly. And versus what appears to be a great-looking hardpoint team and the LA Gorillas, that could be an opportunity for this team to maybe find a little bit of a lane And not talk about the Gorillas at opening weekend. They go 1-1. From where they were, from where everybody had them ranked after the Kickoff Classic, they look miles ahead of where they were. I said that I was worried, right, that they could start 0-3 last week. I predicted them to lose a close series versus the Breach, which did end up happening. And I also said that I had a feeling that they could take down the New York Subliners, which they were able to do. They ended up taking that team down 3-1. They win the Search Destroy in a 6-0. Subliners just did not look like they had their head on straight. We'll be totally honest about that. So in terms of this series, for LAG's sake, I hope that they do not see a Berlin or Gavutu, given the fact that I think Ultra are a scary good Gavutu team. We've seen what Toronto can do on Berlin specifically. So I think if you are LAG, you want to play a Tuscan, you want to play maybe even a Bocage versus this roster, which sounds terrifying considering what Kleenex can do. But maybe that sets up ASIM. ASIM will always be, I know it sounds similar, the ace in the back of the pocket for LAG. If he is dominating, if he is performing, they will be competitive versus a lot of teams out there. But I don't know. I just feel like I trust Ultra more in the Search Destroys, obviously. I trust Ultra more in the controls, even though I feel like LAG could be competitive in the control and competitive in the hard point. I'm going to give Ultra a 3-0 win. I am. I don't know. I feel like Ultra are going to come out. They're going to take this. I think it's just an off series for LAG. I feel like this team's going to be up and down. I just feel like this is not going to be their time. Ultra are going to come into this game with the plan. They're going to know the veto situation. And I think that LAG will make maybe the respawns close, but Toronto, we're just going to clutch up in the end. That's the way that I think this series is going to go. Moving on, and I'm trying to go quick. I don't want this to be like an hour long like the other ones were, so I apologize if I'm not taking more time. You may like that, you may not. So let's move on to our next game. London Royal Ravens versus the Minnesota Rocker. Oh boy, right. We'll first talk about Rocker really quick. I know we already chatted about them, but I do have them losing versus the Surge in a 3-0. I think it'll be somewhat of a convincing win for the Surge, and it's already another very difficult matchup for the Rocker. They're going to have to blow off that Surge loss and just instantly focus for this next game versus a red hot Ravens. How about the Ravens, by the way, right? They go 2-0. They take down the Florida Mutineers, right? They smack them. They go plus 60 in slang. Then they reverse sweep Optic Texas. They beat that team in a game 5, round 11. I will continue to say this. The London Royal Ravens are one of my favorite teams this year, and they already have showed us the young talent that they have got, right? It is not just the Afro show, but it's also Nasty. It's also Gizmo. I have really liked what I've seen from Gizmo during the offseason. To me, he looked amazing as a sub. He looked amazing as an AR. To me, one of the best flexes that we have in the game, and I'm not just saying that based off of stats, because I know he has excellent KDs right now, but truly, now, even if, let's say that the Ravens start to drop a little bit, I still think that Gizmo is an amazing flex player from what I've already got to see. So with that in mind, like I said, the Ravens, they don't even have a bad map, technically. I mean, you talk about the round 11 that they have in game 2 versus Optic. The fact that, we discussed, if Zero decides to challenge the bomb on Berlin, how things could have been differently there. They lose a close Bocage, and then they win the rest of the 3 maps versus Optic. They played a great 3 maps versus Florida. So far, right, throughout the official CDL season, the Ravens have had 8 great maps, and that is scarier for the rest of the league, and that is especially scary if you are Minnesota. Now, talking about Minnesota, I think there's a chance for them to make a dent here. I do. It's just hard to know exactly where the Rocker rank right now. Like I said, they shouldn't have gone to that game 5 versus Optic, but you still have to credit them for that. We know there'll be a threat in the Search Destroys, but to me, it'll be on Minnesota to show that they can be versatile in the respawns. I think we know what to expect from the Ravens. We know they're going to come out trying to punch you in the mouth in the opening one, but I think that the Ravens look like a great team on Berlin, Gavutu, and I think that Rocker do also. I think these maps will be close. I think that Minnesota really give it their best shot, and I am going to say this goes to a game 5, maybe a 3-1. It's hard to call. I'm going to say 3-1. And originally my predictions, I had this going as a 3-2. I think that the Ravens look good in this matchup, or maybe I go to a game 5. No, we'll rock with the 3-1 for now. We'll rock with the 3-1. I may come back randomly and change that, but I am going to go with Minnesota, or rather with the London Royal Ravens, taking, nope, 3-2. I just had a sudden thought. It was the pick'em gods telling me, nope, you want to have that go to a game 5. So I'm going to have it go to a game 5. Ravens, they'll be tested in this series, but they'll get the job done in the end. All right, moving on to Optic Texas versus the Paris Legion. All right, we already talked about Paris, so I will run through them very quickly. I've got them losing right in that game 5 versus the Breach. And like I said, they have some upset potential. So this could be a scary series for Optic Texas, all things considered. Paris did take Atlanta FaZe to that game 5, and that will be ultimately the story in this series, right? Paris in much need of a victory. The same thing is absolutely said for Optic Texas as well, right? This team currently sitting at 0-2. They were expected to be 2-0 coming into this game. And they lose it in really some of those heartbreaking ways possible. You know, they go to back-to-back game 5 round 11s. They lose both of them. They lose it a reverse sweep game 5 round 11, which it does not get worse than that. It does not get worse than losing a reverse sweep game 5 round 11. So they're already feeling, a little defeated. And they come into that match versus Minnesota, where they're up 2-1. They absolutely have the ability to close out that Berlin hardpoint, but we end up going to a game 5 and they lose that one as well in a game 5 round 11. And really based off of a play that is just, I don't even know how to explain that play, right? When Illy rounds the corner over at the dockside, he literally has a 2-piece prepared as one guy's going for the plant. Standy is there, hits him once, stuns him, and then takes him out with a second punch. Just a huge opportunity for Illy. But Sandy was ready. Sandy was prepared. And it just comes down to just the most minuscule of moments. And that has to hurt, right, for this Optic team, which I feel like there's a lot of people talking about, is it time to panic, right? Is it time to panic for Optic Texas? Is this something to be worried about? And I think it's something to be concerned about, right? I mean, you don't want to start off 0-2. You have to realize we faced off against a great Ravens team. We faced off against a Rocker team that just has unbelievable upset potential. A lot of teams are going to go through rough patches this season. It just so happens to be that Optic Texas are starting things off on a rough patch, right? You have two different sets of players who are joining each other, right? You have the Dallas Empire Optic merger, in which you have, like I said, two different player pairings that are coming together. They're also in different roles, right? It'd be different if like Illy and Shotzi were both SMGs and Scumpadashi were ARs. You're still figuring those things out. I think there is something to be said about the leadership side of things. And really just in general, I think that, like I said, what I said at the start of opening weekend, what I've said throughout a lot of these videos so far throughout the year, is that I want to see Optic Texas be a methodical team. I want to see them thrive, when it comes to vetoes, when it comes to just different strategies. I feel like that, along with the slang that we know this team has got, can be a scary sight. And so to me, it's just minor mistakes. It's things that are absolutely able to be figured out. It's not something that I'm like, oh my gosh, like they just don't have the talent. Like that's obviously not the case for this Optic team. It's just a matter of figuring out those mistakes and doing it in a timely manner. So if they were to lose to Legion, I think there is a conversation to have about the panic side of things. But I don't, like I said, if you were to ask me, should Optic Texas make a roster change after they lose to Paris Legion? No, absolutely not. But to say that is there room to panic? Yes, there would be. So this is a huge series in general, right? For Optic Texas, there's got to be some nerves coming into this. And I hope that they just come out and play well. I hope for both teams they play well. I hope it's a great series. But if you are an Optic fan, you're hoping that they come out and they win this 3-0. You do not want this to be close whatsoever. And the one thing that I'm curious about, Gavutu, are we going to see it? Optic likes Gavutu. They played it versus LA Thieves, which I wish they wouldn't have. They bit the bullet for that. I don't want to see them take risks. I'm not in the team scrimmages by any means, so this is just my opinion from an outside perspective. I don't want to see this team take risks. I would like them to respect the Legion on Gavutu, because I feel like Legion have earned that, especially in that series versus Atlanta FaZe, where, again, Paris, the reason why I like to play Gavutu, and especially versus top slaying teams, much like FaZe and possibly versus Optic, is that it's all about the rotations, right? It's all about rotations. Whenever you are playing Gavutu, almost every single hill except for P2 right now is a money hill. It is. That's just the way it works. It is a money hill situation on every single hard point. So if you're an objective-based team who, from an on-paper perspective, is looking for an upset, you want to play teams on Gavutu, because you have a great chance to make the scores go back and forth. 60 here, 60 here, 60 here, 60 here. And like I said, for a team that's looking for an upset, you're trying to find the little mistakes that these top slaying teams will make. And that's what happened versus Atlanta. They picked up on the mistakes. They won 2 respawns versus Atlanta and forced them to win the search and destroys. Right now for Optic Texas, you do not want to rely on search and destroys right now. So I know we spent a lot of time talking about this matchup, but it's a big one. And so I think it will be a very, very important series for both of these teams. You could talk about, from a media standpoint, of course, it's for Optic Texas, but I would be worried if we see a Gavutu hardpoint in this series. That is something that I am circling. That's something that I am putting in bold when it comes down to this matchup. Are we going to see a Gavutu hardpoint? And we very well could see it in control based off the coin flip. Who knows? But to me, S&D has got to get better right now for Optic. I think 3 out of the 4. I don't even know how many search and destroys they've played, but 3 of them have gone to a round 11. And we know that Paris can be a great team in search and destroy. I'm going to give Legion a map depending on what it could be. Whether it's a Gavutu, whether it's a search and destroy victory, whether it's a control win on Gavutu, I really don't know. But I think that Optic do rebound. I think they take it. But Legion, they're at least able to get some sort of answer on the board. I would be surprised if this is a dominant 3-0 where it's like everybody destroys and slaying. I think Legion can remain there. But a lot of it is going to come down to the vetoes for me. I always spent a lot of time on that, but I feel like it was worth it. Let's go to move on. Boston Breach versus the Atlanta FaZe. FaZe, like I said, start things off a little bit slow versus the team that we just got done talking about, the Paris Legion. They went into game 5, though. They rely on the search destroys, and then they go into their next matchup versus the LA Thieves, and they looked like FaZe. I mean, for the most part, right? They come in, they win that series. They really control in regards to the slaying numbers as well. They go like plus 30, I want to say, in overall slaying numbers. Just an excellent performance in that one. Cratter's chatted about it a lot already, and in a few of his YouTube videos, which I have been able to check out. His biggest talking points around the roster were, hey, they just made a lot of mistakes. I feel like I said, Paris made a great call on playing Gavutu versus this team. You limit the tiny tears, you limit Simp and Abizi, you make them work for rotations each time. And while I feel like it was a negative in some way for FaZe because they do go to a game 5, it also was a big learning match for them. So they get points out of it. It doesn't really change anything dramatically. I think that's actually an amazing series for Atlanta because they learned that a team like Paris can exploit you on that map for different reasons. So I think that's going to be an auto veto for Atlanta moving forward. And if you are a team like Boston, who I feel like at least in off-season scrimmages or even so far throughout in-season scrimmages are good on Gavutu, it could be big to kind of keep that in mind. Now for the Breach side, right? I have them beating Paris in a game 5, but this is going to be their biggest test yet, right? For Boston, this is one that you are focusing on more than anything else, right? You've played New York, you played the Gorillas, you've played Paris. Now you're playing against one of the big dogs, arguably the biggest dog out of all of them. And to me, I'm looking at the rookies. I am. I'm looking at the rookies. I'm looking at the 2 SMGs. Because you're going to have to handle Simp and Abizi. And that is not going to be an easy ask by any stretch of the imagination. If you're looking from the underdog perspective, I think from the Breaches side, if you want to win this series, it's going to have to be at least 1 hardpoint. I don't think the control is going to be guaranteed. I don't see the search and destroys being guaranteed. So with that in mind, if you want to have a percentage-wise good chance versus taking down Atlanta, unless it's something wild, which it very well could be, the most likely scenario for Breach, if they want to send this one the distance or try and pull off an upset, it's going to have to be through one of the hard points. But I think that this series is going to be realistically where we see FaZe absolutely level out. Like I said, we've already saw a little bit of it versus the LA Thieves. I mean, the one-day transformation versus Paris, then versus Thieves was dramatic. I think that FaZe come out here, they win the hard point. I think they look good in the search and destroy. I think Breach can definitely go to a round 10, round 11 versus them. And then in the control, I think that Atlanta absolutely handle business. So I think it's going to be a 3-0. Again, it's a big learning series for Breach. Like I said, this is their very biggest test yet. And like I said, if you see Cap, if you see Nero go big, this could be a different story. But I don't feel confident in choosing the Breach based off of hard points so far. And like I said, I think that is going to have to be a ticket for them to really elevate their game. Is essentially what I'm trying to say. So with that in mind, FaZe get the 3-0. We then move on to the final match of Saturday, which is going to be the Florida Mutineers taking on the LA Thieves. So like I said, LA Thieves, after a great kickoff classic, didn't look amazing in their very first official series of CDL 2022. They get the loss versus FaZe. Kenny is heavily outslayed. The whole team is outslayed by like 40 kills. I think I just talked about it, saying 30 kills was actually 40. So Draws is the only player who goes positive. One thing that I've started to realize more, right, is LA Thieves. They're in Los Angeles. So that is something to consider a little bit. There's been a lot of people who've talked about how this team can absolutely tilt in the online environment. So that is something to consider as well. But again, you face off against Atlanta. It is very difficult to see where this team exists right now in the ecosystem of the CDL. They have a great kickoff classic, like I said, where they, to me, look like the second best team at the entire event, even past the Seattle Surge a little bit, because they played Ultra the closest. They were the team that had Ultra on the ropes, and had Toronto not made an unbelievable comeback on Tuscan Hardpoint, we would have been talking about how LA Thieves faced off against the Seattle Surge in the finals. So with that in mind, one thing that I liked about LA Thieves, though, the most has been their hardpoint game. They clutch up majorly in that first one. I want to say it was on Tuscan as well, actually, versus the Atlanta FaZe. I mean, that comes down to like just a few points. Big win for them. I believe they have yet to lose an opening hardpoint, so that will be a big story. And the reason for that is because now on the Mutineers side, talking about hardpoint, that really has been the issue for this team. When Florida has won a series, it's been through the game one hardpoint. Whenever they have not won the game one hardpoint, they have lost. That's been the story throughout the first 4 series. So take that stat however you'd like, but it is going to be a fun one to think about when we talk about this match in particular. To me, this is a big week for Florida, right? I mean, you go, into last week, you face off against London, you get smacked. Then you're able to rebound versus Paris. Now, this is when the matches start to get that much more difficult. If last week was round 1 or level 1, this is level 2 without a doubt. Like I said, they have got some difficult matchups coming forward to them. They will face off against the Thieves, and then they'll face off against the Ultra the following day. So there is a very good chance, if you are the Mutineers, something to keep in your mind, we are coming into this week with a chance of being 1-3 worst case scenario. And that is not a place that you want to be in coming into the final week of the Major 1 qualifiers. So like I said, for Florida Mutineers, like I said, they rebound versus the Legion after getting 3-0'd by London. Skies especially looked excellent, made some huge plays in that Gavutu control. If you did not watch the series, I highly recommend go to the very last 2 or 3 minutes of round 5 Gavutu control, Paris versus Florida, and watch the play that Skies makes. He and Dave Patty went absolutely huge. In terms of breaking the B point over at the beach. The way that they were able to play that was excellent. In terms of this prediction, like, I just don't know where both of these teams are. Again, I was hoping that the LA Thieves were going to have a better showing versus Atlanta. I did give Florida the 2-0 week last week just because I wasn't for sure where the Ravens were going to be. And I don't know. Florida to me just seems a lot like this team from last year. And again, it's only been 4 official matches in Vanguard, but it's like they either 3-1 or they get 3-1. And that was everything. Like, I think they went to the fewest amount of game 5s last year. Reason why was because they were either 3-1ing the opposite team or they were getting 3-1 themselves. And I'm going to stay with the same stigma. Mutineers have yet to see it game 5 so far throughout this year. If they go to it, I take LA Thieves in that position, but I think it only gets to 4. I think the Mutineers just run into a better looking Thieves team. I think Thieves are going to rebound after that loss versus Atlanta. But if LAT were to lose this, that's not a great sign. It's not a great sign to start off the year 0-2. Wouldn't be good. That basically means that you need to win your next 3 matches straight. So with that in mind, I think LA Thieves come out. They have a good showing. And I think Kenny ultimately just plays a lot better. I do. And I don't think Skies elevates to a 1.2 type of KD in that particular match. So I think the LA Thieves take it 3-1. All right, looking at our first match of Sunday, we've got the LA Gorillas taking on the London Royal Ravens. Like I said, Ravens, we already discussed them a bit, but they're going to be off of a great victory versus the Rocker, in my opinion. And now they sit with the chance of having a 3-0 record. They have now got a 3-0 record. They've got the chance of having a 4-0 record with one more match in week 3. And to me, this week for London is, are they going to get caught? Are they going to get caught by somebody? Because this week could be huge for this team. And you could say, oh, well, they've got Minnesota versus LAG. They're better than both those teams. That is true, right? From what we saw from opening weekend, they look like one of the best teams in the game. But this is where a roster like the Ravens instantly gets tested. Minnesota are going to test your clutch. They're going to test your search and destroy. They're going to, obviously, like we learned versus Optic, they're going to make sure, right, that you are closing out your hard points. Same thing can be said for LAG. They're going to test you, especially in the hard point. They're going to test you in the control, and they could pull out something, crazy in the search and destroys. So I don't know. Like I said, I know I've been given a lot of flack, right, for the London, ranking them where I did, which technically wasn't actually my ranking. But I don't know. I feel like LAG could make this a wild series. Maybe it's just because I chose LAG to beat New York 3-1, which nobody had, and I just happened to get that right. But I don't know. I've got LAG losing 3-0 versus the Ultra. The fact that they'd come out and beat the Ravens would just be wild. But I don't know. Maybe it happens. Maybe it happens. I have no idea. This one to me, for whatever reason, just feels like a match that surely can't just be typical. Whether it's a Ravens 3-0 or if it's LAG coming out strong. I don't know. I'm going to say that LAG takes this 3-1, but I want us to look back at this whenever this week is over and see if I've changed this, because this is the one to change if I'm going to change one. I'm going to see how Ravens look versus the Rocker. If Ravens just come out and destroy the Rocker, then I'm going to change this. But if it goes to a game 5 like I have it, I think that LAG will be a test for London. It's not to say that London are a bad team. Again, I have them going 1-1 this week. I'm expecting this team to be 3-1 once this week is over. But I think they'll get caught in one of these, whether it's versus the Rocker or whether it's versus LAG. I think they go 1-1. I think they'll beat the Rocker, but lose to Gorillas. But we shall see. We shall see. Maybe it's this one. Maybe not this one. Maybe this one. I have no idea. Moving on. Florida Mutineers taking on the Toronto Ultra. All right. Toronto, like I said, they're off of a solid game versus LAG. I'm expecting them to turn things around. Difficult matchup for the Gorillas overall. For the Mutineers side of things, they have just taken on the LA Thieves. They lose that in a 3-1 fashion. I don't know. Again, it's hard to predict the Mutineers because they are from at least from Cold War, an unpredictable team. They can surprise you. They can pull off some crazy matches. They could beat some of the top teams. And they could also lose some of the top teams. I'm just gonna go with the 3-1 just to be safe. I think that Florida can be a problem a little bit, but I just don't think that they're going to be too much of a problem for Toronto to handle. I think the Ultra come in with a game plan every single time. I think that they could be an issue for Vivid specifically in this series. I think that's going to be a huge factor. When Florida were playing great versus Paris, that opening bocage, it was because Vivid decided to drop 50 something, 46 kills. I don't even remember. I think it was 46 kills. So to me, I'm looking at Vivid to go big, to ultimately try and clutch this one out. But I think it's going to be the Ultra that end up walking away with this. Finally, this to me is the game. Right, this is a huge match. This might be my favorite game of the entire weekend. LA Thieves versus the New York Subliners. Reason being, right, LA Thieves going to be off of a win versus the Mutineers. We know they're a solid team. Right, we saw them lose to Atlanta last week. They're trying to prove themselves again. They have the chance to go 2-0. New York Subliners, much like Optic Texas, go 0-2, but the Subliners did not look great at all. They didn't look great a single bit, right? They have a poor opening weekend, despite what was an excellent kickoff classic. They suffered a 3-0 loss to the Surge. They then lose 3-1 versus LAG, where, like I said, it was just a tilting series. And so far throughout the CDL, Neptune and Clayster sit at a 0.7 KD. That is not to say that Neptune and Clayster are bad players and that they are necessarily underperforming. It just goes to show, whenever I say numbers like that, it's to show that there was something severely wrong with just the game plan for New York, right? There was something severely wrong with the game plan that they've got. Neptune should not be at that KD specifically. I know that Clay's a better player than that. I know that Neptune's a better player than that. But to me, the ultimate situation right now with New York is that adjustments have to be made in regards to roles, at least in regards to the way that Neptune specifically is playing. I was watching him on the minimap throughout the entirety of the LAG series, literally staring at his number on the minimap every single time. It looks like He's downing himself. It looks like I don't know. It just doesn't seem like the roles are cemented. And I also went back and I've looked at the 8 hard points that the subliners have played. Neptune has either been 3rd or 4th in terms of engagements in 7 out of those 8 hard points. Meaning, like I said, he is either 3rd or 4th in engagements in 7 out of the 8 hard points that New York have played. That should not be happening, right? I understand if that happens from time to time, but in my opinion, right, which doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot, in my opinion, Neptune should be one of the fastest players in the game, right? Neptune should be in your face. He should be putting up Kleenex likes of numbers, Vivid like numbers, especially from last year. He has unbelievable gun skill. Slack talked about that at the desk at Kickoff Classic. His gun skill is 10 out of 10, right? And with the guidance of Krim and Clay, that was what was so exciting about the prospect of having Hydra and Neptune together, is that you've got 2 unbelievable talents. But to me, Neptune, in terms of his role in the map, he doesn't know specifically what to do. He doesn't know what the team needs. And so I think it's going to be up to the coaching staff. I think it's going to be up to Krim and Glacier specifically to point that out, to figure things out, and to ultimately work through what is going to be a huge series for them. Like I said, 0-3 versus a great team in the LA Thieves. Who have New York still got to face off against? That's something to consider. They've got Breach and they've got Optic Texas. Oh man, these are going to be some fire games. Like, New York are, to me, the team to watch, where they have got some very, very interesting matchups up next. So, like I said, for New York, I mean, the matches aren't going to get easier. You still have Breach, you still have Optic to face off against. And imagine, right, if both teams have a losing record coming into that match in terms of Optic versus New York, that could be wild. Or if both teams are like 2-2 by that point, that would be wild. But still, LA Thieves versus New York, I'll be honest, I don't even have a prediction written down. Like, I really don't. I'm looking at the document that I have where I just put a few bullet points for each game. I don't know. It's just like, you think that New York are going to come out and surely play better because they have to. I expect this team to figure out, hey, this is the way that Neptune's going to play from now on. On the other side for LA Thieves, I don't know. It's hard to predict where this team is going to rank, especially in the online atmosphere. I mean, I was super impressed by what we saw from them at the Kickoff Classic. I think they just ran into a great-looking Atlanta FaZe team. I'm going to say this goes to a Game 5. Dare I say a Game 5 Round 11? Not just to say that it goes to a Game 5 Round 11, but just because that's just the way that I feel like with a series of this, with a series that is as important as this one, especially for the subliners, I think it goes to a Game 5 Round 11. And I think I choose the Thieves. I don't know. Like I said, this one to me is one of the hardest ones to predict. I have no idea. This is to me the most exciting one of the entire weekend. I am stoked to see how LA Thieves versus New York subliners go. I'm going to say LAT for right now, but we'll see. We will see what ends up going down. But yeah, that's going to be the video. That's going to be how we break things down. I think LA Thieves get it done, and New York are now 0-3 with Breach and Optic Texas still up. Optic rebound. FaZe continue to look strong. Minnesota have an 0-2 week after the crazy Game 5 Round 11 win versus Optic. And what? Toronto goes 2-0. Florida, they go 0-2 this week. So, like I said, some wild moves still happening here in week number 2. But feel free, if you guys have not done so already, like this video, make sure to subscribe to the channel. I appreciate you guys for helping me walk through my pick'em process, because this is not an easy week to choose. As you can see, got a lot of wild matchups going down. But I'm excited to see how this weekend lines up. I think it's going to be excellent. It's going to be fun to figure out what the storylines look coming into the final week of Major 1. It's going to be excellent. Like I said, thank you guys so much for watching the video. Thank you for liking, subscribing, doing all those wonderful things. Make sure to join us on youtube.com/COD League this weekend, starting things off on Friday at 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern. I think that's the way that it goes. But yeah, appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week. We're going over our pick'ems, and I promise you, we are having a 70% win record. We're going 7-3 at the least. I'm saying it right now. It's going to happen.